Professional women's football is coming to Canada, and I cannot wait. It's been about a year and a half since we first found out about Project 8 and Diana Matheson's ambitious plans to bring a top flight domestic women's football league, soccer league, however you want to call it, to Canada. And this week, we finally hit some major milestones. Specifically, we found out about the league name. We heard more about the schedule, the league format, and salaries for each team. And most importantly, in my opinion, we finally found out the last two teams that would be making up the inaugural first season, which is set to start next April 2025. So let's just get into a little bit about what we know. So, first, the league name. Northern Super League, ou en français, Super Ligue du Nord. Love it. Love the name, love the branding. I love the teal color. I like the font that's used for the letters. And I even like the star, which is a bit of like an homage to the North Star, which is quite symbolic in this country. And then the actual league name, Northern Super League. There are three key features that stood out to me. One, no Canada's in the title. There's no soccer mentioned in the league name, and there's no women in the league name. So in terms of using Northern as opposed to Canada, so they could have gone with like a Canadian Super League, Canada Super League. I like Northern. It's quite common actually for leagues across around the world and even in North America to not have the name of the country. So I don't think that's a big deal. And then in terms of why Northern was used, I actually think that makes a lot of sense. I think when you think about Canada, you do think North's in our national anthem. We are located in the Northern Hemisphere. We are a Northern country. And just thinking about where the league is geographically, regionally. So we've got leagues in Europe and Asia, uh, Oceania, Africa. We are located in the Americas, which is North America, Central America, and South America. And when you think about those three areas of the Americas, we are the most northern country. So therefore, our league is going to be the most northern league. So Northern Super League totally makes sense to me. And then the S. So the S stands for super, not soccer. I like this. Diana Matheson actually said she went with Super League to reflect the elite caliber of players that would be making up the rosters. And to that, I say good on her. She's obviously betting on herself and she's betting on the league to be able to attract top talent. And when we talk about the salary, that'll explain a bit about why she's quite confident that they will be able to attract top talent. For me personally, I like that it's not soccer. I know in North America we call it soccer, but the sport is global and around the world it's called football. And so I don't know, I kind of like that soccer was left out of the league name just to reflect the global nature of the sport that they're going to be playing. And then lastly, no women in the league name, which a lot of people were wondering whether it would be or wouldn't be. Dan Matson actually talked about this and she said, this sport is for everyone. This league is for everyone. We didn't put Canada in the title either. So obviously it tells you there is some intentionality behind leaving women out of the league name. I think in Canada, obviously we have Quinn on our national team. Quinn identifies as trans and non-binary. I think more and more players are identifying as this as well. And so to position your new league as one that is going to be inclusive and welcoming of players who don't fit the gender binary, I think is perfect and necessary. Diana also mentioned that she didn't include women in the league name so that it could be equal with other leagues around the world. Let's be real. She's talking about men's leagues because it's men's leagues that don't have gender in the league name. Thinking about other football leagues around the world, there's English Premier League, there's the Bundesliga, there's La Liga, there's Serie A, League One, League 1. None of these have men in the league name, but the women have to have women in there for some reason. And so I like that Diana was like, no, we're going to be equal with those other leagues and we're not going to put gender in there. The reality is there's only one Northern Super League. So the second you look it up, you're going to see that it's a women's league. And so it doesn't need to be in the league name. So for me, overall, I'd say 10 out of 10 in terms of the league name and in terms of the branding. I really like it. I think it's going to look really good on merch too. Next, we'll talk about the schedule format. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, the league's going to start April 2025 and is going to run through until the fall. So, this means it's essentially going to match an NWSL schedule, which, no surprise, Canada gets really cold in the winter. So, we obviously had to use a spring to fall schedule. What this means, though, is that this league is going to be competing in terms of like the talent pool. We're going to be competing with the NWSL for the same sort of pool of players that want to play in North America. Every league, most of the people in the league tend to be from that country or from like neighboring countries. So between the NWSL, the new USL league that's going to be starting, and of course our Northern Super League, we're all going to be sort of competing for these like North American talent. So it'll be interesting how well we do to attract some people to choose our league over some of these other leagues. In terms of the length of the season, so it's 25 games long. There's only 6 teams, so obviously I'm just doing the math. Every team's going to play each team 5 times, assuming it's going to be equal. A little bit more games than I was expecting, but honestly, the PWHL, so the Professional Women's Hockey League, just finished their inaugural season. Congratulations to Minnesota, by the way. They also only had 6 teams and they played 24 games. So maybe 25 is actually not that weird or uncommon. So after the 25 games, there is going to be a playoff format. So the playoffs are supposed to start in the fall with a championship game afterwards. Not surprised by the use of playoffs. Obviously, being from Canada and North America, playoffs is big. It's in every league. Personally, I watch a lot of European football, and I like the table format where whoever finishes first at the end of the season is the team that holds up the trophy. But I get it. We're in North America and playoffs are really popular. And to be honest, for a new league where you're trying to attract interest and get people to fall in love with the league, probably having a playoffs, which is really exciting, can draw more attention and more attraction. So I get the playoff format. It's okay. And then there's no draft system, which is really interesting. So I'm guessing, I didn't see too many more details, but I'm guessing that they're just going to have teams reach out to players and just sign that way, and players are going to have sort of like power in their hands to decide where they want to play. I like that. Similarly, the trading system is going to be different. So apparently players have to sign off on trades in order for it to be executed, which is different from what we've seen in the NWSL, where players just get a call being told they've already been traded and they have no say whatsoever. So I love this no drafting system, and trades needing to be signed off really gives empowerment to the players and gives them a little bit of control about where they get to play. And I think that's great. Hopefully they can stick with it. Hopefully it can work. Really interested to see how that works out. Okay, salary. So kind of hinted about this earlier, but each team is going to have a salary cap of $1.5 million with a minimum of $50,000 Canadian dollars per player. This sounds really great and surprising. I didn't think an inaugural league could have such a high cap. 50 being the minimum is really good. It works out to about an average of 70,000 per player. But of course, with 50 being the minimum, there are going to be people making 50, which means there are going to be some players potentially making like 6 figures, which is really good for a new league. And so I think this sort of hints at why Diana Matheson feels pretty confident that they'll be able to attract top talent. And I think so too. They also have this rule that each team can sign one marquee player above the cap to attract top talent. This exists in the NWSL, where you can spend above your team's salary cap in order to bring in like a star player from like Europe or overseas. I think if you want to be able to compete globally with the other leagues around the world, you have to have something like this in place. So I like that Diana Matheson has thought about this. And I really hope it is able to work and they are able to bring in some really cool players, exciting players to come play in this league. Let's talk about the teams. So there are 6 teams and it's coast to coast. You've got Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa. No, I want to go in order. We got Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Halifax. Obviously, this is great in terms of like coast to coast, but it's obviously like Southern Canada. There are no teams in the territories, which, yeah, if you want it to be super reflective and representative of the whole country, you'd have some teams up there. But obviously, logistically, it's a bit hard to have teams in Northern Canada. So this is definitely Southern Canada, but at least it is coast to coast. A little bit east heavy, but there is a plan to have two more teams launched in 2026, supposedly. So if I had to guess, they would probably be teams located in the West. So then maybe it'll be more balanced. But I think for a first year, 6 teams, pretty good balance across Canada. So I want to talk a little bit about each team, and I'll just go in order from west to east. So starting with Vancouver. So the Vancouver team is going to be part of the Whitecaps family, but Stephanie Labbé, who is the general manager for women's soccer at Vancouver Whitecaps, has already said that there's going to be different branding, different name, different team colors as well. So that'll be interesting to see. Not sure yet about where they're going to play, but BC Place is obviously an option. It is where the BC Lions, so the Canadian Football League, the CFL team plays at BC Place. The Vancouver Whitecaps men's team plays at BC Place. Has a capacity of 54,500. Located at a really good location, downtown, easy to get to in terms of transportation. Another option is the Swangard Stadium. This has a capacity of 5,288. So you've got BC Place, which is at 54K, and then you've got Swangard, which is about 5,000. This is located in Burnaby, which is not downtown Vancouver, but honestly, looking at the maps, they look pretty close. Looks like it's like 20 to 30 minutes to get from Burnaby to BC Place, for example. So I don't know how public transportation is, but it doesn't look that far from Vancouver, so I don't think it's probably that difficult to get to. One thing to note about Swangard Stadium is it is used by Vancouver Whitecaps 2, which is like the academy team. It's also used by League One BC teams, so like the semi-pro teams. So there might be like some competition for stadium use, but those are options. I'm going to talk a little bit later about stadium size. So I'm going to note the stadium capacities as I go through each city, but I'll talk about that at the end. Next, Calgary. So we know the most about this team. So they're going to be called Calgary Wild FC. They have a logo already, which I'll put up. So we've got this red and purple branding. There's got this owl appearance in there with the W visible in the logo. I think this logo looks pretty cool. It's a little cartoonish, but I think like this would look really good on like a hat or on like a shirt. So I think these could probably sell pretty well. They're going to be playing in the McMahon Stadium, so already confirmed. So the McMahon Stadium is used by the Calgary Stampeders, which is the Calgary CFL team. It's located between University of Calgary and downtown. So again, really good location, close to public transportation, so easy and accessible to get to. It's got a capacity of 35,400. Another option could have been the Atco Stadium, which is where the men's Canadian Premier League team plays, like the Calgary CPL team plays. That has a capacity of 6,000. Obviously, they've decided to go with McMahon Stadium. So yeah, that'll be cool. There's going to be a big stadium that they'll get to play in. Next, AFC Toronto. So Toronto team actually was originally called AFC Toronto City, but they seem to have dropped the city, which I'm good with. You've already got the AFC. You don't need the city at the end. Don't have too many details on team branding. There is a website for the team and it's in black and white. I don't know if that means that could be the branding, a black and white, or they just wanted to go with like a muted website until they officially announced their branding colors. Hey everyone, coming in from the future. So since the time I recorded this video, AFC Toronto actually released their new logo, which is right here. So the logo has been described as being a primary anchor T, which is the T that's in the middle, propped up by mirrored sevens. So basically, two sevens facing the opposite direction, with one of the sevens representing the seven founders of the team, and the other seven represents Toronto's original six boroughs, plus the Greater Toronto Area itself. So, my thoughts, so when I first saw this logo, I wasn't too sure how I felt, but now a few hours later, I can definitely say I like it. It's for sure grown on me. I like the circle logo with the image in the middle. It's actually kind of giving Chelsea vibes a little, like Chelsea has that circle as well with the line in the middle. And just looking at the image on its own, I think it looks super cool. So now for sure we know the logos for two teams, Calgary Wild FC and AFC Toronto. Interesting that their primary colors are both red. I guess we'll just have to see what the other teams end up releasing for their branding. Okay, now back to the video. In terms of stadium, Lamport Stadium does seem to be of interest. It's located in like the West Toronto area near Liberty Village, for those of you familiar with Toronto. It's got a capacity of 9,600. It does need some renovations, and I believe the city has actually already submitted a proposal or something to get the renovations going. So I think the city is on board with Lamport Stadium being the home, but they recognize that there needs to be a lot of work done. So I don't know if they're gonna be able to have the renovations done by next April. If not, York Lions Stadium seems like an obvious alternative to use. It's got 4,000 capacity. Only thing is you would have to share it with like York University, the York Lions, and TFC2, which is Toronto FC's academy team. So it's a bit busy, but already exists and is already being used for other teams. So it could make sense as an option for AFC Toronto. In terms of locations, they're actually like between Lamport Stadium and York Lions Stadium, they're actually in opposite ends of the city, with Lamport Stadium being located downtown. York Lions Stadium is located in like North York, North Toronto area. Good thing is they're both quite accessible by public transportation, so easy to get to transportation wise. Okay, then there's Ottawa. So Ottawa was actually the last team to be announced the other day. So we found out they would be the sixth and final team that would be part of the inaugural season. Honestly, we basically know nothing about Ottawa at this point, and Diana Matheson did indicate they are behind. So we're going to find out. They're going to be the last team that we find anything out about in terms of like names and branding. Don't know about the location. TD Place does exist. It's got a 24,000 capacity and located downtown, good location. Again, similar to the other teams that I mentioned, a lot of other teams are using it. The Ottawa Red Blacks, which is the CFL team, the Ottawa GGs, which is University of Ottawa's, I guess soccer and football teams use that, and then Atletico Ottawa, which is the CPL team, the Canadian Premier League team, also uses that field. So might be busy to use, but it's an option. Honestly, I was thinking about Carleton. So Ottawa has two universities located in the city. There's Carleton University, my alma mater. So I know about it, but it's quite a small stadium. It's only got 35,000 capacity. I think seats are only on one side, and Carleton's not downtown. So I don't know. I don't think it might be an option. I'm not sure, but maybe TD Place might be it. But we don't know anything about Ottawa yet, so we'll see what the team announces in the coming months, I guess. Then there's Montreal. So we also found out about Montreal on the last day. Really great to have a Quebec team. I was a little bit nervous at first that maybe they wouldn't be involved, but they are. Not much is known about the team in terms of branding or their name. I do know that they're not affiliated with CF Montreal, which is the MLS team, the men's MLS team. So we know that, at least we know the branding's not going to be what CF Montreal has. In In terms of the venues, it has been stated that they won't have a permanent location when the season begins. So they're going to be playing in different locations in Montreal, which is going to be quite interesting to see. I hope it doesn't impact their home field advantage because they're going to be playing all around the city. And I hope that at least where they're playing is accessible for everyone to get to and that it doesn't impact the whole atmosphere for each of the games. Um, and then lastly, Halifax. Based on the branding and the logo that's been floating around, which I will put up, it seems like they may be called Atlantic Women's FC. I don't know, based off the logo. The white, purple, teal branding, super cool. Not sure if I like the logo. It seems a little busy. I feel like I read somewhere that that isn't actually going to be the final logo. They just wanted to put something out there. So it might be changing. I'm kind of hoping it does. They are not affiliated with the Halifax Wanderers, which is the CPL team. So the branding is quite different. If you look up the Halifax Wanderers, they look different. Actually, I'll put up the logo here. Quite different logo. So definitely not affiliated. However, it does seem like they will be playing at the Wanderers grounds for their pitch. Fun fact, this is a grass pitch. So out of all of the stadiums I've named, all of them have been turf, which kind of sucks when you think about injuries. But Halifax Wanderers grounds is grass. It's got a 6,500 capacity. So really interesting. So yeah, those are all the 6 teams. And I just wanted to give a little bit of information. There's a little bit more information known about the teams, mainly about management and owners, but I didn't really want to get into owners. All this stuff is available online though, so of course you could look up if you're really interested in seeing who the owners are. Okay, venue, stadium. So I really made sure to mention the capacity size because I think that that is obviously a really interesting topic when thinking about women's football in particular and in Canada because soccer stadiums and venues in Canada are sparse, to say the least. There are a lot of, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of soccer pitches, but it's for kids. So there's not a lot of seating. It's definitely not what could be used for a professional team. You have a professional team, you need like concession stands, you need like good parking. It needs to be really accessible. The size needs to be regulation size. These things are limited in Canada, unfortunately. And so venues is something that's going to need to be worked out. Capacity, big one. So Diana Matheson actually said we've got the 30K, 20K to 30K stadiums, and then we've got 3K stadiums. And there isn't that middle ground of like 10 to 12K, which is what Diana Matheson thinks is like the sweet spot, which makes a lot of sense. If you watch the NWSL, the KC Current just built their first women's football stadium, and it's got a capacity of 11,500. They've been able to fill it quite well. Great atmosphere, not too small, but not too big that it can't be filled. So I definitely hear where Diana's coming from with this like 10 to 12K being the sweet spot. And if I just again reiterate the capacities that I had listed, so I'll just go from biggest to smallest. So it's 54,000 in BC Place, 35,000 in McMahon, which is in Calgary, 24,000 at TD Place in Ottawa. It's either 4,000 or 9,600 in Toronto. Halifax is 6,500, and then Montreal, we don't know yet. There is the Stade Saputo, which is where the CF Montreal MLS team plays, and that has a capacity of about 20K. So kind of what Diana was saying is either a lot, huge capacity, tens of thousands of capacity, or it's under 10,000. I think if I had to choose, my preference would be for this Northern Super League, have them play in a smaller stadium, like less than 10,000, so you could fill it, so that you got that loud atmosphere. And then as the league grows, hopefully in popularity and people start attending, you have these bigger stadiums that you can move into. That would be my preference. But obviously, we've already seen with Calgary, they went with the 35,000. They had the option of the 6,000 stadium. They went with the 35,000. So we'll see how that goes. I hope the fans turn out and come watch. Lastly, I just want to make a point about the sponsors. Not going to speak too much about this, but they've already confirmed some sponsors. So they've got Canadian Tire, Sport Chek, DoorDash, Air Canada, and CIBC, really big name companies that are already on board, which is great for generating revenue. And hopefully the league can continue to gain some more sponsors. Well, that was a summary of some of the main things that we know about this new Northern Super League, which I'm really excited about. If you watched this whole video and found it helpful or interesting, please leave a like, leave any thoughts you have about the league down below. And of course, if you want, please subscribe. I'll be putting out different sports related videos on this channel, including keeping up with the Northern Super League. So I will see you in the next video.